$1. Right now, in your pocket or your bank account, a single dollar bill can barely buy you a pack of gum, maybe a small candy bar if you're lucky. You certainly can't walk into a restaurant with $1 and expect to eat. You can't fill your gas tank. You can't buy clothes. $1 today is almost meaningless. But what if I told you that same dollar, that identical piece of currency, once bought a full week's worth of groceries for a family? What if I told you it could pay for a night at a decent hotel, a three-course restaurant meal, or even a doctor's house call? What if a single dollar was once so valuable that losing one felt like losing 100? Today's topic is one of the most mind-bending journeys through American economic history you'll ever take. We're going to explore exactly what $1 could buy throughout different eras of U.S. history, using real advertisements, actual catalog prices, and documented records from newspapers, stores, and businesses that existed long before any of us were born. And I promise you, some of these prices are going to make your jaw drop. You're going to feel genuine anger at inflation. You might even shed a tear for the purchasing power our grandparents and great-grandparents enjoyed. So let's take that crumpled dollar bill out of your pocket and travel back in time to see what it was really worth. Before we start our journey, we need to understand something fundamental about money. A dollar isn't just paper, it represents purchasing power. And purchasing power is relative to what things cost. In 1800, the average American worker earned about $1 per day. That means every single dollar represented an entire day of labor. When you spent $1, you were spending 8, 10, or even 12 hours of hard work. Today, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 per hour. A dollar represents about 8 minutes of work at minimum wage. That's a massive psychological difference. Our ancestors treated every dollar with reverence because it represented so much of their lives. With that context in mind, let's begin our journey in the 1800s and work our way forward, decade by decade, watching the dollar's power slowly erode until we reach the almost worthless currency we carry today. Let's start in the early 1800s, the era of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and the young American Republic. In 1800, $1 was a significant amount of money. The average laborer earned between $1 and $1.50 per day. Skilled craftsmen might earn $2, so what could that precious dollar buy? A full bushel of wheat cost approximately $1. That's 60 pounds of wheat, enough to make bread for a family for weeks. A bushel of corn was even cheaper, around 50 cents, meaning your dollar could buy 2 bushels. Beef cost about 4 cents per pound. For $1, you could purchase 25 pounds of beef. That's enough meat to feed a family for a month if stretched carefully. A dozen eggs cost about 8 cents. Your single dollar could buy over 12 dozen eggs. That's 144 eggs. A gallon of milk ran about 7 cents. $1 bought you more than 14 gallons of milk. But here's where it gets really interesting. In 1800, you could buy an entire pig for about $3. That means $1 represented a third of a whole pig, months of bacon, ham, and pork chops. A good pair of shoes cost around $1.50. Your single dollar covered most of a new pair of footwear. A night at a roadside tavern, including dinner and breakfast, cost between 50 cents and $1. Your dollar got you a bed, 2 meals, and probably a drink or two. A newspaper cost about 6 cents. $1 bought you almost 17 newspapers, over 2 weeks of daily news. And here's something that will really blow your mind. You could buy an acre of government land for $1.25. Yes, an entire acre of American soil cost barely more than $1. Moving into the mid-1800s, prices remained remarkably stable. The Civil War caused some inflation, especially in the Confederacy where prices skyrocketed, but in the Union States, your dollar retained most of its power. An 1860 Sears Catalog, Well, actually Sears didn't exist yet, but similar mail-order catalogs did, shows prices that seem almost fictional today. A man's suit could be purchased for around $10, meaning your single dollar represented a significant fraction of a complete outfit. A woman's dress ranged from $2 to $5, depending on quality and fabric. A pound of coffee cost about 15 cents. $1 bought you nearly 7 pounds of coffee, enough to last months for most households. Sugar was about 8 cents per pound. Your dollar purchased 12.5 pounds of sugar. Tea cost around 50 cents per pound. $1 got you 2 full pounds of tea. A barrel of flour, that's 196 pounds, cost about $6. Your single dollar represented nearly 33 pounds of flour. But here's a heartbreaking contrast. An enslaved human being was valued at between $1,000 and $2,000 in the 1850s South. Every single dollar in the Southern economy was, in some way, tainted by this monstrous institution. When we talk about what money could buy in this era, we cannot forget that people were treated as property, and that shameful fact shaped the entire economy. After the Civil War, America entered the Gilded Age, a period of rapid industrialization, massive wealth inequality, and remarkably low prices for consumer goods. The 1880s and 1890s saw the rise of the great department stores and mail-order catalogs, and the prices in these catalogs are absolutely stunning to modern eyes. Let's look at an actual 1897 Sears, Roebuck & Co. catalog, one of the most famous documents in American consumer history. A men's three-piece suit, $4.50. Your single dollar covered almost a quarter of a complete suit. A pocket watch, $1. A real working pocket watch for exactly $1. A revolver, an actual firearm, $1.68. Your dollar almost bought you a gun. A bicycle, $14.95. $1 represented a meaningful fraction of personal transportation. A rocking chair, $1.75. Your dollar nearly bought you furniture. Shoes started at 98 cents. Your single dollar bought a complete pair of shoes with 2 cents left over. Women's corsets, 45 cents to $1. A complete undergarment for $1 or less. A baby carriage, $4.45. Your dollar covered almost a quarter of a baby carriage. Men's shirts, 25 cents each. $1 bought you 4 shirts. Overalls, 50 cents. Your dollar bought 2 complete pairs of work pants. A sewing machine, a real, functional sewing machine, started at $8.50. Your single dollar represented meaningful progress toward owning the most important labor-saving device in the average American home. And here's one that really hurts, a complete house. Yes, you read that correctly. The 1897 Sears catalog offered pre-cut house kits starting at around $175 for a basic structure. Your single dollar represented more than 0.5% of an entire house. Now let's enter the 1900s and see what the new century brought. In 1900, the average American worker earned about $450 per year. That's less than $2 per day for most people. Your single dollar still represented serious purchasing power. A loaf of bread cost about 5 cents. $1 bought 20 loaves of bread. A quart of milk cost about 7 cents. Your dollar purchased over 14 quarts of milk. A dozen eggs cost about 20 cents. $1 bought 5 dozen eggs, 60 eggs. A pound of butter cost about 25 cents. Your dollar bought 4 pounds of butter. A pound of cheese cost about 15 cents. $1 purchased nearly 7 pounds of cheese. Coffee was about 15 cents per pound. Your dollar bought nearly 7 pounds. A pound of steak cost around 15 cents. $1 bought you almost 7 pounds of steak, enough for multiple family dinners. A movie ticket at the new Nickelodeon theaters cost 5 cents. Your dollar bought 20 movie admissions. A Coca-Cola cost 5 cents. $1 bought 20 Cokes. A newspaper was 1 cent. Your dollar bought 100 newspapers. A ride on the streetcar cost 5 cents. $1 bought 20 rides across town. A night at a basic hotel ran about $1 to $1.50. Your single dollar covered a night's lodging. A haircut cost about 15 cents. $1 got you 6 or 7 haircuts. And here's a big one. The Ford Model T, introduced in 1908, initially cost $850. By 1925, the price had dropped to $260. Your single dollar represented meaningful progress toward owning an automobile. The 1920s brought the Roaring Twenties, jazz music, flappers, prohibition, and a booming consumer economy. Prices rose somewhat, but the dollar still had remarkable power. Let's look at what $1 could buy in 1925. A gallon of gas cost about 25 cents. Your dollar bought 4 gallons of gas, enough to drive 50 or 60 miles in most cars of the era. A loaf of bread cost about 9 cents. Your dollar bought 11 loaves. A pound of ground beef cost about 20 cents. $1 purchased 5 pounds of ground beef. A dozen eggs cost about 40 cents. Your dollar bought 2.5 dozen eggs. A quart of milk cost about 14 cents. $1 bought 7 quarts. A pound of coffee cost about 45 cents. Your dollar bought over 2 pounds. A movie ticket at a fancy theater cost about 25 cents. Your dollar bought 4 movie admissions. A Coca-Cola still cost 5 cents. Your dollar still bought 20 Cokes. A men's dress shirt cost about $1. A single shirt for a single dollar. A woman's dress cost between $5 and $15 at a department store. A radio, the hot new technology, cost between $75 and $200. Your single dollar represented meaningful progress toward owning this revolutionary device. A telephone call cost about 10 cents for a local call. Your dollar bought 10 phone calls. A telegram cost about 60 cents for a basic message. Your dollar sent 1 telegram with change left over. A good restaurant dinner cost about 50 cents to $1. Your single dollar bought a complete meal at a nice establishment. Then came the crash. October 1929, the Great Depression. The 1930s turned the American economy upside down. Prices fell because nobody had money to buy anything. Wages collapsed. Unemployment soared to 25%. In this deflationary environment, your dollar actually became more valuable if you were lucky enough to have one. In 1933, at the depth of the Depression, here's what $1 could buy. A loaf of bread cost about 7 cents. Your dollar bought 14 loaves. A pound of ground beef cost about 11 cents. $1 purchased 9 pounds of ground beef. A dozen eggs cost about 22 cents. Your dollar bought over 4 dozen eggs. A gallon of milk cost about 45 cents. Your dollar bought over 2 gallons. A gallon of gas cost about 10 cents. Your dollar bought 10 gallons of gas, enough to drive over 100 miles. A movie ticket cost about 20 cents. Your dollar bought 5 movie admissions. A man's shirt cost about 50 cents. Your dollar bought 2 shirts. A pair of shoes cost about $2. Your single dollar covered half a pair. A radio, which had been a luxury, now cost as little as $20 for basic models. A new car, like a Ford, cost about $500. Your single dollar represented a meaningful fraction of automotive ownership. But here's the cruel irony of the Depression. Prices were low, but nobody had any dollars. The average family income dropped from about $2,000 in 1929 to about $1,500 in 1933. Many families had far less. Millions had nothing at all. A dollar was worth more than ever, but dollars were harder to find than ever before. World War II brought rationing, price controls, and a wartime economy that changed everything. During the war years of 1941 to 1945, many goods weren't available at any price. But for items that were available, prices remained relatively controlled. A loaf of bread cost about 8 cents. Your dollar bought 12 loaves. A gallon of milk cost about 50 cents. Your dollar bought 2 gallons. A dozen eggs cost about 40 cents. Your dollar bought 2.5 dozen. A pound of butter cost about 45 cents, but you needed ration stamps to buy it. A gallon of gas cost about 15 cents, but it was rationed to a few gallons per week for most civilians. A movie ticket cost about 25 cents. Your dollar bought 4 admissions to see wartime films and newsreels. A pack of cigarettes cost about 15 cents. Your dollar bought 6 or 7 packs. A Coca-Cola still cost 5 cents, 20 Cokes for $1. A paperback book, the new pocket-sized format, cost about 25 cents. Your dollar bought 4 books. A comic book cost about 10 cents. Your dollar bought 10 comic books. And here's a poignant one. A letter home from a soldier overseas cost about 3 cents to mail. Your dollar sent over 30 letters to loved ones fighting abroad. After the war came the boom. The late 1940s and 1950s saw unprecedented prosperity for American families. The middle class expanded, suburbs were built, consumerism took off. Let's look at 1950 prices. A gallon of gas cost about 27 cents. Your dollar bought nearly 4 gallons. A loaf of bread cost about 14 cents. Your dollar bought 7 loaves. A gallon of milk cost about 82 cents. Your dollar bought just over 1 gallon. A dozen eggs cost about 60 cents. Your dollar bought nearly 2 dozen. A pound of ground beef cost about 50 cents. Your dollar bought 2 pounds. A pound of chicken cost about 45 cents. Your dollar bought over 2 pounds. A pound of bacon cost about 52 cents. Your dollar bought nearly 2 pounds. A cup of coffee at a diner cost about 5 cents. Your dollar bought 20 cups of coffee. A Coca-Cola still cost about 5 cents, 20 Cokes for $1. A candy bar cost about 5 cents, 20 candy bars for $1. A movie ticket cost about 40 cents. Your dollar bought 2.5 admissions. A comic book still cost 10 cents. Your dollar bought 10 comics. A paperback book cost about 35 cents. Your dollar bought nearly 3 books. A telephone call cost about 5 cents for a local call. Your dollar bought 20 calls. A first-class postage stamp cost 3 cents. Your dollar bought 33 stamps. A gallon of paint cost about $4. Your single dollar represented a quarter of a gallon. A television set, the hot new technology, cost between $200 and $500. Your single dollar represented meaningful progress toward this revolutionary device. A new car, like a Chevrolet, cost about $1,500. Your dollar represented a small but real fraction of a new car. And here's a big one. The median home price in 1950 was about $7,450. Your single dollar represented about 1/7,000th of a house, which sounds tiny, but consider that today's median home price is over $400,000, and your dollar represents about 1/400,000th. The 1960s brought change, cultural, political, and economic. Inflation began to creep up, slowly eroding the dollar's power. In 1965, here's what $1 could buy. A gallon of gas cost about 31 cents. Your dollar bought just over 3 gallons. A loaf of bread cost about 21 cents. Your dollar bought nearly 5 loaves. A gallon of milk cost about 95 cents. Your dollar bought just over 1 gallon. A dozen eggs cost about 53 cents. Your dollar bought nearly 2 dozen. A pound of ground beef cost about 50 cents. Your dollar bought 2 pounds. A McDonald's hamburger cost 15 cents. Your dollar bought 6 hamburgers. A McDonald's cheeseburger cost 19 cents. Your dollar bought 5 cheeseburgers. McDonald's fries cost 15 cents. Your dollar bought 6 orders of fries. A Coca-Cola cost 10 cents. Your dollar bought 10 Cokes. A candy bar cost about 5 cents. Your dollar still bought 20 candy bars. A comic book had risen to 12 cents. Your dollar bought 8 comics. A movie ticket cost about $1. Your single dollar now bought exactly 1 admission. A paperback book cost about 50 cents. Your dollar bought 2 books. A record album cost about $4. Your dollar represented a quarter of an album. A gallon of paint cost about $5. Your single dollar represented a fifth of a gallon. A new car cost about $2,500 on average. Your dollar's relative value continued to shrink. The median home price was about $20,000. Your dollar represented 1/20,000th of a house. The 1970s brought economic chaos, the oil crisis, stagflation, double-digit inflation. The dollar's purchasing power collapsed faster than at any time since the Civil War. In 1975, here's what $1 could buy. A gallon of gas had shot up to 57 cents after the oil crisis. Your dollar bought less than 2 gallons. A loaf of bread cost about 36 cents. Your dollar bought less than 3 loaves. A gallon of milk cost about $1.40. Your single dollar couldn't even buy a gallon of milk. A dozen eggs cost about 77 cents. Your dollar bought about a dozen and a half. A pound of ground beef cost about 89 cents. Your dollar bought barely over a pound. A McDonald's hamburger had risen to 30 cents. Your dollar bought only 3 hamburgers, half what it bought 10 years earlier. A Coca-Cola cost about 20 cents. Your dollar bought 5 Cokes, half what it bought a decade earlier. A candy bar cost about 15 cents. Your dollar now bought only 7 candy bars, down from 20. A comic book cost about 25 cents. Your dollar bought 4 comics, half the previous decade. A movie ticket cost about $2. Your single dollar no longer bought admission. A paperback book cost about $1.75. Your single dollar couldn't buy a book. A record album cost about $7. Your dollar was increasingly meaningless. Gas station prices changed so rapidly that signs had to be modified. The economy seemed out of control. By the end of the 1970s, many Americans felt genuine panic about inflation. The dollar was dying before their eyes. The 1980s brought Paul Volcker's Federal Reserve, sky-high interest rates, and eventually inflation control. But prices never went back down. They just stopped rising as quickly. In 1985, here's what $1 could buy. A gallon of gas cost about $1.12. Your single dollar couldn't buy a gallon of gas. A loaf of bread cost about 55 cents. Your dollar bought less than 2 loaves. A gallon of milk cost about $2.20. Your dollar bought less than half a gallon. A dozen eggs cost about 80 cents. Your dollar bought about a dozen and a quarter. A pound of ground beef cost about $1.20. Your single dollar couldn't buy a pound of beef. A McDonald's hamburger cost about 50 cents. Your dollar bought 2 hamburgers. A Coca-Cola cost about 50 cents. Your dollar bought 2 Cokes. A candy bar cost about 35 cents. Your dollar bought less than 3 candy bars. A comic book cost about 65 cents. Your dollar bought 1 comic with change left over. A movie ticket cost about $3.50. Your dollar covered less than a third of admission. A paperback book cost about $3.50. Your dollar bought about a third of a book. A cassette tape cost about $8. Your dollar barely registered. A new video game, for the Nintendo NES cost about $40. Your dollar was almost meaningless. The median home price was about $82,000. Your single dollar was a rounding error in real estate. The 1990s and 2000s continued the trend. Each decade brought higher prices and a weaker dollar. By 1995, a gallon of gas cost about $1.15. A gallon of milk cost about $2.50. A movie ticket cost about $5. A McDonald's hamburger cost about 60 cents. By 2005, gas had risen to $2.27 per gallon. Milk was about $3 per gallon. A movie ticket was about $7. A Big Mac cost over $3. And now, in 2024, a gallon of gas costs about $3.50 on average, and much higher in some areas. A gallon of milk costs about $4. A dozen eggs costs about $3, and spiked to nearly $5 during the 2023 egg crisis. A pound of ground beef costs about $5. A loaf of bread costs about $3. A McDonald's hamburger, from the dollar menu when it existed, now costs nearly $3. The dollar menu is essentially gone. A Coca-Cola from a vending machine costs $2 or more. A candy bar costs about $2. A comic book costs about $5. A movie ticket costs about $12 to $16, and much more for IMAX or 3D. A paperback book costs about $15 to $20. A new video game costs $70. The median home price is over $400,000. Your single dollar today buys essentially nothing. It sits in your pocket, nearly worthless, a shadow of its former self. Let's put all of this in perspective with a direct comparison. If you had $1 in 1900, here's what you could buy: 20 loaves of bread, or 60 eggs, or 7 pounds of steak, or 20 movie tickets, or 14 quarts of milk, or 20 Coca-Colas, or 100 newspapers. If you have $1 today in 2024, here's what you can buy: a third of a loaf of bread, or 4 eggs, or a fifth of a pound of steak, or a 16th of a movie ticket, or a quarter of a quart of milk, or half a Coca-Cola, or nothing at a newspaper stand because print newspapers barely exist. $1 in 1900 had the purchasing power of approximately $35 today. That means your single dollar today is worth less than 3 cents in 1900 money. Think about that. Every dollar in your wallet would have been worth about 3 pennies to your great-great-grandparents. What caused this dramatic collapse in purchasing power? The short answer is inflation. The longer answer involves monetary policy, wars, economic crises, and deliberate government decisions. Before 1913, there was no Federal Reserve. The dollar was tied to gold, and inflation was minimal over long periods. Prices in 1900 weren't dramatically different from prices in 1800. But the Federal Reserve, created in 1913, gave the government the ability to create money. And governments love creating money because it lets them spend without directly raising taxes. World War I saw significant money creation. The 1920s saw relatively stable prices. The Depression actually saw prices fall. But World War II changed everything. The government printed massive amounts of money to fund the war effort. Prices rose. After the war, the Bretton Woods system tied the dollar to gold, providing some discipline. But in 1971, Richard Nixon ended the gold standard entirely. Since then, the Federal Reserve has been free to create as much money as it wants, and it has. The money supply has expanded exponentially, and prices have risen to match. Between 1913 and 2024, the dollar has lost approximately 96% of its purchasing power. A 1913 dollar would be worth about $30 today. Or, viewed from the other direction, Today's dollar is worth about 3 cents in 1913 money. This isn't a conspiracy. It's documented monetary policy. The Federal Reserve explicitly targets about 2% inflation per year, meaning your money is designed to lose value over time. What does this mean for ordinary people? It means that saving money in a bank account is a losing strategy. If your savings account pays 1% interest and inflation is 3%, you're losing 2% of your purchasing power every year. It means that wages have to constantly increase just to stay in place. A worker who earned $5 per hour in 1970 would need to earn over $37 per hour today just to have the same purchasing power. It means that older generations who remember cheaper prices aren't just being nostalgic. Things really were cheaper. Their dollars really did buy more. It means that younger generations face a fundamentally different economic reality. A house that cost $7,000 in 1950 now costs $400,000. Wages have not increased 57-fold. And it means that the American dream of building wealth through saving and hard work has been systematically undermined. You can't save your way to prosperity when your savings are constantly losing value. But here's something interesting that complicates this narrative. Not everything has gotten more expensive relative to wages. Some things have actually become cheaper in terms of hours worked. A television in 1950 cost about $250. The average worker earned about $1.50 per hour. That TV represented about 167 hours of work. A television today costs about $300 for a basic model. The average worker earns about $30 per hour. That TV represents about 10 hours of work. Televisions have gotten cheaper relative to wages because technology improved dramatically. The same is true for many electronics. A basic calculator that cost hundreds of dollars in the 1970s is now essentially free. Computers that cost thousands are now in everyone's pocket as smartphones. Clothing has also gotten cheaper relative to wages in many cases, thanks to global manufacturing. But the things that really matter for economic security, housing, healthcare, and education, have gotten dramatically more expensive relative to wages. A house that represented 2 or 3 years of income in 1950 now represents 7 or 8 years of income. A year of college that cost a few $100s in 1970 now costs tens of thousands. Healthcare costs have risen faster than almost anything else in the economy. So while we can buy more gadgets than our grandparents could, we struggle more to afford the basics of a middle-class life. Let me share some specific advertisements from throughout American history that really drive home how much things have changed. A 1915 ad for Crisco vegetable shortening advertised a 1.5-pound can for 25 cents. That same size today costs about $6, 24 times as much. A 1925 ad for Listerine mouthwash showed a bottle for 25 cents. A similar bottle today costs about $8. A 1935 ad during the Depression showed men's suits for $12.50 at a department store. A comparable suit today costs at least $200. A 1945 ad for Kellogg's Corn Flakes showed a box for about 13 cents. A box today costs about $5. A 1955 ad for a Chevrolet Bel Air showed a starting price of about $1,800. A comparable Chevrolet today starts at about $25,000. A 1965 ad for a family trip to Disneyland showed adult admission at $4.50. Disneyland admission today costs over $150. A 1975 ad for a Sony Walkman. Well, the Walkman didn't exist yet, but a portable radio cost about $20. Today, You can get a smartphone that plays unlimited music for essentially no additional cost, but the phone itself costs $1,000. A 1985 ad for a Nintendo Entertainment System showed a price of about $100. Adjusted for inflation, that's about $270 today. A new gaming console today costs $500 or more. These ads tell the story of a dollar in decline. Each decade, the numbers get bigger. Each decade, the dollar buys less. Here's something that might make you feel a little better, or maybe worse. This isn't uniquely American. Every major currency in the world has experienced similar inflation over the past century. The British pound, the French franc, the German mark, all have lost massive purchasing power. Some currencies have done even worse. The German mark was essentially destroyed in the 1920s hyperinflation. The Zimbabwe dollar became worthless in the 2000s. The Venezuelan bolivar collapsed in the 2010s. Compared to these disasters, the American dollar has been relatively stable. It's lost 96% of its value, but it's lost it slowly, over a century, rather than overnight. But that slow decline might actually be more insidious. When a currency collapses quickly, everyone notices. They adjust their behavior. They demand change. When a currency declines slowly, each generation simply accepts the new normal. Your grandparents remember when things were cheaper, but they're dismissed as being out of touch. Each generation adjusts to higher prices without realizing how much has been taken from them. So what's the takeaway from all of this? First, understand that the dollar you earn today will be worth less tomorrow. This isn't pessimism, it's documented monetary policy. Plan accordingly. Second, don't just save money, invest it. Savings accounts lose to inflation. Investments in stocks, real estate, and other assets at least have a chance of keeping pace. Third, appreciate the things that have gotten cheaper. Technology has given us miracles that our grandparents couldn't imagine. A smartphone in your pocket has more computing power than NASA had during the moon landing. Fourth, advocate for policies that address the things that have gotten more expensive. Housing, healthcare, and education costs are policy choices, not laws of nature. Other countries manage these costs better than we do. And fifth, understand history. When you see those old prices, 5-cent Coca-Colas, 20-cent hamburgers, $7,000 houses, don't just feel nostalgia. Understand the forces that changed those prices and how they continue to affect your life today. Let me leave you with one final comparison that really puts everything in perspective. In 1964, the minimum wage was $1.25 per hour. A gallon of gas cost about 30 cents. An hour of minimum wage work bought you 4 gallons of gas. Today, the federal minimum wage is $7.25 per hour. A gallon of gas costs about $3.50. An hour of minimum wage work buys you about 2 gallons of gas. In terms of gas buying power, minimum wage workers today are poorer than minimum wage workers in 1964. Their dollars are worth less. Now apply that same logic to housing. In 1964, the median home cost about $18,000. At $1.25 per hour, that represented about 14,000 hours of minimum wage work, roughly 7 years of full-time labor. Today, the median home costs about $400,000. At $7.25 per hour, that represents about 55,000 hours of minimum wage work, roughly 27 years of full-time labor. A minimum wage worker in 1964 could theoretically buy a median home with 7 years of labor. A minimum wage worker today would need 27 years. That's not inflation, that's economic transformation, and that single dollar in your pocket tells the whole story. What $1 could buy in the past, USA isn't just a fun exercise in nostalgia. It's a window into how our economic system works, who benefits from it, and who pays the price. That dollar in your pocket carries the weight of history. It's worth less than it was yesterday, and it will be worth even less tomorrow. But understanding that history gives you power. You can make better decisions. You can advocate for better policies. You can see through the illusion that higher numbers mean greater prosperity. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many dollars you have. What matters is what those dollars can buy. And on that measure, we're all a little poorer than we used to be. Thank you for watching this journey through the purchasing power of the American dollar. If this video made you think differently about money, inflation, or economic history, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. Drop a comment telling me which historical price shocked you the most. Was it the 15-cent McDonald's hamburger, the $7,000 house, the penny newspapers? And subscribe if you want more videos that explore the hidden forces shaping our economic lives. Until next time, hold on to that dollar. It won't be worth as much tomorrow.